How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Beis, Daf 2 of Masechta Shevuos. Okay, friends, who's ready for Shevuos? Scratch that. Who's excited for Shevuos? Shevuos looks like it's going to be kind of a somewhat interesting Masechta to some extent. Let me just check out this. Yeah, this... Okay. Anyways, so Shevuos is not a very long Masechta. It's 49 dafs. Now, it talks about Shevuos, oaths, which is interesting because we've been hearing about Shevuos for ages, right? Since Bava Kama already, I mean, probably from before Bava Kama, but Bava Kama already talks about, to swear, Shevuos HaPikadon. I guess Bava Metzia, but already in Bava Kama, maybe more Bava Metzia, but whatever, Shomrim, and you have to sue if it gets stolen. Shomer Chinam can swear that he didn't, right, that it got stolen. We're talking about all sorts of Shevuos, Modeh B'Miktsas, all sorts of things. Modeh B'Miktsas was in Bava Kama already, mostly in Bava Metzia. But anyways, we've been hearing about oaths, Shevuos all the time. We learned Masechta Nedarim a while ago, already back in the Noshim days. We learned about Nedarim, but Shevuos are a little different. We're going to learn about them now. And what's also interesting about this Masechta is that actually, so it's, I think 8 prakim. I think they pack 8 prakim into these 49 dafs. And the first 7 prakim. Now, the first 2 prakim, they talk about Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashim, which is also an interesting sort of unexpected thing. We're going to learn about that already in today's Mishnah. Already, we're going to start talking about Korbanos, Korban Olav Yored. The first 2 prakim kind of talk about that, which I guess is the first 2 prakim is how many dafs? About the first 20, about almost half of the Masechta. 2/5, which is 40% of the Masechta, is focused on Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashav, going into the Beis HaMikdash when you're tamei, or eating kachim when you're tamei. But anyways, so, okay, what else can I tell you? But it's going to be interesting, I think, hopefully. Alright, here we go. Starting with the first Mishnah of Masechta Shevuos, Daf Beis Amud Aleph, says the Mishnah Shevuos, Shtayim Shehein Arba Yedias Hatuma Shtayim Shehein Arba Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shehein Arba Maris Negoyim Shnayim Shehein Arba. Chaver, remember Masechta Shabbos? Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shehein Arba. Remember that? The Oni, the Balabayas. Anyways, so says the Mishnah, Shevuos Shtayim Shehein Arba. Shevuos are 2 that are 4. What does that mean? It means, well, the pasuk says, right? What does the pasuk say? Okay. What does that pasuk have? Do you have the pasuk anywhere? Kiyavate or something? I don't know. Does it say it over here? Where is this pasuk? I don't know. What is it over here? Basically, the pasuk says, Laharo lehetiv. Oh, here it is. Yes. O nefesh kisi shava. A person who swears, levate bisvasayim lahara o lehetiv. To do bad or to do good. So, to do bad is lo ochal. To do good is ochal. Ki, positive versus negative. So, basically, the point is, the pasuk says lahara lehetiv. That's in the future. So, therefore, the shnayim is that the Torah, it says in the pasuk, in the future, right? Lahara lehetiv. Right? So, lahara, so lahara is lo ochal, lehetiv is ochal. So kilu ochal velo ochal, which is the future. That's from the pasuk, right? But there's also achalti velo achalti. You could swear I ate something, I didn't eat something. So that past tense are the additional 2. So 2 that are 4. So the basics are the future ones, ochal velo ochal, and the additional 2 are the past tense ones, achalti velo achalti. Yediyas atuma shtayim shein arba. So also Yediyas Atuma, who can explain that to me? So for example, you're not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash if you're tummy. You're also not allowed to eat kodshim meat if you're tummy. Now, what if you forgot that you are tummy and you ate kodshim meat, or you forgot that you are tummy and you went into the Beis Hamikdash? So the halacha is that you bring what's called a korban olive yored, although it actually depends on certain details, which we're actually going to get into in just a few minutes. So let's actually not say what you have to do. But basically, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about when you forget that you are, or you're unaware somehow. We're going to talk about the details, that you are tameh, and you eat kachim, or you go into the Beis Hamikdash. So that's two. Shtaim. Shehein arba, which is the other way around. You know that you are tameh, but you forget that you're in the Beis Hamikdash, or you forget that this is kachim meat. Okay, so the shtaim is when you forget that you're tummy, and then you eat. You know that it's kachim. You know that you're in the Beis Hamikdash, but you forget that you're tummy. That's the first two. You forget that you're tummy, go into the Beis Hamikdash. You forget that you're tummy, then you eat kachim. And the other two are that you know that you're tummy, but you forget that you're in the Beis Hamikdash, or you forget that it's kachim. Azoy. Or I guess you forget that you're going into the Beis Hamikdash. So that's the shehein arba. Yitzias HaShabbos Shtaim Shehein Arba. This brings us back about 5 years. Yitzias HaShabbos Shtaim Shehein Arba. Right, there was a lot of literature. A lot of people were writing about Yitzias HaShabbos Shtaim Shehein Arba, because after all, you still have the momentum from brachas, right? Everybody here at Babylon Talmud has weathered the storm, is weathering the storm. We still have another 2 years. Although it almost feels like 2 years is around the corner. It kind of hit me today. It's like, oh wow, we only have 2 years left. It's a little sad. We still have another 2 years. That's a long time, but it almost feels like, wait, this is almost over. What are we gonna do next? Anyways, but yeah, it's been 5 years already. We still have another 2 years, but we're 2/3 of the way in. Before you know it, We'll make a siyum hashas, and then what? I'll call upon him. Right. So that was still at the very beginning. We learned Masechta Brachos. So some people, we're still hanging in there, and they get to Shabbos. You start the new Masechta, and everyone's writing about the ani and the ashir and the poor person and all sorts of ha'aras that they have, and then by now people aren't really talking about Shevuos time Shein Arba. Not with the same fanfare, I think. I'll go upon him. So Yitzias HaShabbos Shtaim Shein Arba is so the Shtaim is the Yitzias, right? So of course, if I could bring back your memory, catch up your memory, or whatever it is, refresh your memory. So of course on Shabbos there's Hotzah and Achnosa, right? So Hotzah would be taking some, or in this context, well, actually in our context, is taking something out from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, and Hachnosa is bringing something in from Rishus HaRabim into the Rishus HaYochid. Now, of course, you have the Baal Habayis who's inside his house in the Rishus HaYochid, and you have the Ani who's outside in the Rishus HaRabim. So there are two ways for Hotzah that are for when you also add the two possibilities of Hachnosa. So what's the two possibilities of Hotzah? Well, either the Baal Habayis who's inside, picking up something in his house and bringing it out and exiting it to Rishus HaRabim. The other option is the Ani sticks in his hand into the house and takes something out of the house into Rishus HaRabim. Those are the two, that's the Shtaim, those are the two possibilities of Hotzah. Shehein Arba, that you can also add two possibilities for Achnosa. One is that the Baal Habayis pulls something in from Rishus HaRabim into his Rishus HaYochid, that's Achnosa. Alternatively, the Ani picks something up in Rishus HaRabim and brings it into the Rishus HaYochid, that's the other option of Achnosa. So there are two Hotzahs, Shein Arba. When you add the two Achnosas to them, they are four. Myris Nigoyim, Shnaim Shein Arba. And then finally, Tsaras, there's Shnaim, right, which is Se'es and Baheres. Shein Arba, that Se'es has its Tolada and Baheres has its Tolada. We're going to learn about that on Daf Hey Apparently, I'm sure everybody cannot wait. Here we go. So now, interestingly, after we kind of mention those Shtaim Shein Arbas, as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of discussion about Tumas Mikdash B'Kodoshav, and here we go. So now the Mishnah says, Es sheyesh ba yedia batchila v'yedia basoif v'he'elam b'intayim. So now, we're talking about the Tumah. So if you have a guy who's tummy and he knows that he's tummy, maybe he touched a dead mouse, and he knows that he touched a dead mouse. He knows that he's tummy, and then he forgets, and he goes into the Beis Hamikdash, and then later on he goes home and he says, "Don't, I was tummy." So he knew he was tummy initially, forgot that he was tummy, went to the Beis Hamikdash or ate kodshim, and then later on he remembered that he was tummy. Right? So that is again, as sheish ba yedia batchila, when he has knowledge of his tumah, when he recognizes his tumah at the beginning, v'yedia basof, and at the end he's also aware that he's tummy, but v'helam b'intayim, but in between he forgets that he is tummy and he eats kodshim, goes to the Beis Hamikdash. Harezeh be'oila v'yored. So he brings a korban ola v'yored. Who can tell me what a korban ola v'yored is? A korban ola v'yored is a korban that is a different korban based on how much money you have. If you can afford it, so you bring a goat. If you, what does it say? What is it? Hey, Vayikra. Hey, what does the pasuk say? Versus Vayikra. In Sefer Vayikra, Perek Hey. Okay, Vayikra. Yeah, we're in Parsha Shmini now, but I think this is in Parshas Vayikra. Okay, Perek Hey. So it says, okay. So Vehevi Ashamo. So he brings a asham, achatos ashachata nekeva minatzon, kisba osiras izim lechatas. Okay, so he brings either a female sheep or a female goat. Okay, I think it's a korban chatas. It says ashamo la'ashem al chataso. I think it's considered a korban chatas. Anyways, and then it says, I'm reading the psukim. If he can't afford a sheep, so he can bring two doves or pigeons, I think. Okay, etc. But if you can't afford that, the birds, so then he brings a tenth of an ephah of fine flour for a chatas. Lo yasim ale Hashem v'lo yitin ale levona, no oil, no frankincense, because it's a korban chatas. So depending on what the person can afford, that will be what he brings for his korban. Okay, so when he's initially aware of his tumah, and he's ultimately aware of his tumah, but in the middle, he forgets, and he eats kachim or goes into the Beis Hamikdash. So then he is, so he brings a korban ole v'yored. Yesh ba'yidiyah batchila ve'ein ba'yidiyah basof. So if, he initially knew that he was tummy, right? He touched a dead mouse. He knew he was tummy. Then he completely forgot, and he never remembered. Because if at any point he remembered, so of course he would bring a korban ola v'yored, as we just said. In a scenario where he just simply completely forgot, and he never remembered, and he went to the Beis Hamikdash, or he ate kodshim. So, soira naisa b'fnim v'yom kippurim tole. So, on Yom Kippur, there is a goat that is offered inside the Azara, by the I guess the Mizbeach HaPnimi, and then there is a goat that is offered on the Mizbeach HaChitzon. Right, the first one is in the Heichel. Right, the Mizbeach HaPnimi is in the Heichel, and the Mizbeach HaChitzon is in the Azar, outside of the Heichel. So the goat that is offered bifnim in the heichel, as well as Yom Kippur itself, the day of Yom Kippur itself, Tole. So they will sort of pend any kind of Yisurim that he might have gotten for going into the Beis Hamikdash, reading Kodshim in a state of Tumah, but he was completely unaware. So comes Yom Kippur, a goat is offered, the Sa'ir that is offered Bifnim, and the day of Yom Kippur itself are enough to kind of like, cover his back, protect him from Yisurim, until he remembers. And if he never remembers, then they'll just continue to pend. Ad shivadalo, until hopefully eventually, until if eventually he remembers, do v'yavi be'ola v'yored, and he'll then, at that point, then he knows about it. There's yediyah batchila, yediyah basof, so then he'll bring a korban ola v'yored. Ein bo yediyah batchila, aval yesh bo yediyah basof. What if he didn't initially realize that he was tameh, but then he becomes aware later on after he had already eaten kodshim or went into the Beis Hamikdash? So, Sa'ir hanaise bachutz v'yom kippurim mechaper. So in that case, right, when there was no yediyah batchila, but there was yediyah basof, so the Sa'ir hanaise bachutz, right, the goat that's offered on the mizbeach hachitzon, v'yom kippurim, and the day of Yom Kippur, mechaper, they atone. Shenemar, right, no additional korban is necessary. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, milvad chatas hakipurim, that the sa'ir that goes on the mizbeach hachitzon, what is it called? The sa'ir anaise bachutz, is milvad chatas hakipurim, aside from, in addition to, the sa'ir anaise bifnim. So ama shezeh mechaper zeh mechaper. So the Sa'ir Anaisa Bifnim and the Sa'ir Anaisa Bachutz atone similarly. How so? Mahapnimi in Mechaper Elo Alav Sheish Bo Yediyah. Well, just like the Sa'ir Anaisa Bifnim is Mechaper for Davar Sheish Bo Yediyah, when there is a Yediyah Batchila, right? We said that when there's a Yediyah Batchila, and then he forgets about it, so then the Sa'ir Anaisa Bifnim, will take care of him so long as he doesn't remember Basof. One second, let me see something. Yeah, right. So Afachitzon, so also the Sa'ir Hanaise Bachutz Ein Mechaper Elo Adav Sheish Ba Yediyah also is Mechaper and something that has the Yediyah. In this case, Yediyah Basof, when there was no Yediyah Batchila, but there was Yediyah Basof. Okay, so the Sa'ir Anaisa Bifnim is Mechaper when there was Yediyah Batchila, but then you forgot. And the Sa'ir Anaisa Bachutz is for when you didn't know initially, but then you knew. And when you simply were oblivious to it all, you didn't realize that you became Tameh, and you never found out. Well, in that case, Se'irei Harigolim v'Se'irei Rosh Chodoshim Mechapen. Well, then the goats that are offered on the festivals or on Rosh Chodesh, they are Mechaper for that when you have no Yediyah at all. So basically, so far, the only thing that you actually have to bring a korban yourself is when you knew about it initially and you knew about it in the end, but you forgot in the middle. But if you didn't know about it initially and then you knew about it later, then the Sa'ir Hanaise Bachutz will be Mechaper. If you initially knew about it but then forgot about it, then it's the Sa'ir Hanaise Bifnim. If you didn't know about it at all, then it's Se'irei Regalim, Se'irei Rosh Chodoshim. So Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Shimon Amar, whereas Rabbi Shimon says Se'irei Haregalim Mechaperin, that the Se'irei Regalim are what is Mechaper for when you didn't have any Yediyah at all. Havalo Se'irei Rosh Chodoshim, but not the goats of Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Mechaper. So the goats of Rosh Chodesh, what are they Mechaper for? Says Reb Shimon, Al Hator Shocheles Atami, a person who's Tahor, who eats something that is Tameh. So the Korban Chatas of Rosh Chodesh, the Sa'ir of Rosh Chodesh, will be Mechaper for that. And Rashi says in the first Rashi on Beis and Beis, halfway through the Rashi, Chiyuv Koris nitna kaparazo al kach. And even though there's no chiyuv kares for somebody who's tahor who eats something tamei, nonetheless this kapara still applies to it. Reb Meir Omer, it says Reb Meir kol asirin, all of these seirim, kaparoson shove al tumas mikdash v'kodashav, their atonement are equal for tumas mikdash v'kodashav. So whether it's the sair anase bachutz, whether it is the sair regalim, whether it's the sair of Rosh Chodesh, right? So whether it's for when there's no yediyah at all, whether it's for when there was yediyah in the end but not initially, whether Torah shachos hatame, all of these, any of them will be mechaper for, right? So the Sayer Nasa B'chutz on Yom Kippur, or the Sayer Regalim, or the Sayer Rosh Chodesh, each one of them will be mechaper for any of those scenarios, according to Reb Meir. Yeah, one second. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay. Alright. Yeah, what's that? Yeah. Okay, fine. Rashi points out that Aval Saira Naisa Befnim, in case you're wondering, but the Saira Naisa Befnim, Lo Nechleku Olav, She'enu Mechaper Im Elu, Velo Elu Tolin Es Tliaso, that's in its own kind of category for when you knew about it initially, but then forgot about it. Okay. Fine. Reb Shimon Omer says Reb Shimon. So now we're repeating Reb Shimon's opinion, but for the question that we're about to ask in a minute. Reb Shimon Omer says Reb Shimon Seiri Roshei Chodashim Mechapen Atar Shachos Atame. Right, but this is exactly what Reb Shimon had said, that the Sayer of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper for a tahor person who ate tamei, who ate tamei tuma. Kodesh, that is tamei. V'eshel regalim. And that the Sayer of the Shalosh Regalim mechapen al she'ein ba'yediyah lo batchila v'lo basof is mechapen when there was no knowledge of the tumah, whether at any point. V'shal Yom Kippurim mechaper al she'ein ba yediyah batchila v'al yesh ba yediyah basof. And the Sayer anaisa b'chutz on Yom Kippur is mechaper when there was no yediyah initially, but there was ultimately a yediyah. Right, that's exactly what Reb Shimon had said earlier. Amrlo, they said to Reb Shimon, Maushe yikarvu zeboze. What if you had set aside a goat for the Saira Naise Bachutz on Yom Kippur, and that was going to atone for when there was no Yediyah Batchila, but there was Yediyah Basof. And then they lost the goat, so they offered a different goat, but then they found that goat, the initial goat, after the replacement was already offered. So can the initial goat be then offered on Sukkot? Right? Can it then be offered on Sukkot or the following Rosh Chodesh? So Amelen Yikarvu. Reb Shimon says, sure. So Amelo, but Hoil ve'ein kaparos and shave eich kreven zebaze, but their kaparas are different. Right? The goat was initially set aside for the Saira Naisa Bachutz on Yom Kippur, which is intended for she'ein ba'yediyah batchila ve'yesh ba'yediyah basof. That's what it was intended for. How can it be used on Sukkot to atone for when there was no Yediyah at all, right? For the Regalim, when there's no Yediyah at all, or for Rosh Chodesh, for Torah Shachos Atam, it's a different thing. So Shimon responds, Kulan Bain L'chaper Al Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav. Meh. Yeah, sure. This one is Ein L'Yediyah Batchila V'Yesh B'Yediyah Basof. This one's Ein L'Yediyah Batchila Or Basof. This is Torah Shachos Atam. But they're all Be'etzem Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav. It has to do with eating. Going to Beis Hamikdash, eating kodshim when in a state of tuma, or when by Torah Shachos Tamei, it's talking about where the kodshim was tamei. But the point is, it's all sort of the sugya of tumas mikdash v'kodashav, and because this was a goat that was set aside to atone for tumas mikdash v'kodashav, it's fine, even though sort of the details, are different. But the premise of Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav is holds for all of the for Sar Nasa B'Chutz on Yom Kippur, for Sar Haragalim, for Sar Rosh Chodashim. They all are kind of for Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashav, and therefore you if one got lost, you can bring it on the other occasion. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda says, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Mishmo, in the name of Reb Shimon, Seirei Rosh Chodashim Mechapin al Tar Shachos Atami. Okay, that the sire of Rosh Chodesh is Mechaper for a Tahor Shachos Atami. Okay, as he had said. But now what's interesting is Mosif Aleim Shor Regalim. Now the Regalim though add on to that Shemechapen al Tar Shachol Es Atami ve'al she'ein ba Yidei lo b'tchila v'lo basof. That actually the sire Haregalim is in addition to the sire of Rosh Chodesh, meaning the sire of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper for Tar Shachol Es Atami. The sire Regalim is mechaper also for Tar Shachol Es Atami, but in addition to that, it's also mechaper for She'ein Ba Yidei Batchila V'lo Basof. And then most of Alein Shem Kippurim, and then the sire Anasa B'chutz Yom Kippur is adds another thing. So it's mechaper for Tar Shachol Es Atami, and for She'ein Ba Yidei Lo Batchila Lo Basof, and Shein mechaperin al hatar shachol es atome, ve'al shein ba'yediyah lo batchila v'basof, ve'al shein ba'yediyah batchila aval yesh ba'yediyah basof. And as a third thing that the Sarah Nasa B'chutz Yom Kippur is mechaper for is shein ba'yediyah batchila, but there is yediyah basof. So according to Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, he explains that Reb Shimon's opinion is that the Sar of Rosh Chodesh as the least amount of kaparas, and then kind of the Sar Regalim, and then Sar Yom Kippur can be mechaper on all the things. Amrullah, they said to Maushi Karvuz Abazah. So they said to Shimon ben Yehuda, can these korbanos be interchangeable? If one of them gets lost, if the Sar of Yom Kippur gets lost, can you bring it on Rosh Chodesh if they find it? So he says, yeah, sure, no problem. They said to him, look, Imkain, Yushal Yom Kippurim, Kraven Rosh Chodashim. So I understand how if the Yom Kippur Sa'ir gets lost and then they find it, you can offer it on Rosh Chodesh, right? Because after all, the Yom Kippur one, right? Well, Rosh Chodesh is mechaper for Tar Shachos Atami. The Yom Kippur, the Sa'ir Anase Bachutz and Yom Kippur is mechaper, for three things, including, for more than just Tar Shachos Atami. I didn't explain that well, I feel like, but I think the point still got over. This is very technical stuff, but meaning the Sar of Rosh Chodesh is only mechaper for Tar Shachos Atami, whereas the Sar of Yom Kippur is mechaper for She'ein Ba'yediyah Batchila. She'ein ba'yediyah batchila, veish ba'yediyah basof, and also she'ein yediyah lo batchila basof, as well as tar shachol es atami. Basically, I understand how you can, if the Sar of Yom Kippur, sorry, Nasa B'chutz and Yom Kippur gets lost, how you can bring it on Rosh Chodesh, because basically it also covers whatever the Rosh Chodesh korban would cover. However, what I don't understand is if the Sar of Rosh Chodesh got lost and then they find it, how could that be offered on Yom Kippur? Because the goat was initially set aside for Rosh Chodesh, which is only for Tar Shachol Es Atami. How could that then be offered on Yom Kippur, where it needs to also be mechaper at least for Shelo Yediyah Batchila, but Shelo Yediyah Batchila ve'aya Yediyah Basof. I'm like forgetting the She'ein Ba'yediyah Batchila aval haya Yediyah Basof. Oh my gosh, I'm lied. But Reb Shimon ben Yehuda gives the same response as Reb Shimon had given. Kulan Boy and L'chaper al Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashav. Look, at the end of the day, they're all being offered for Tumas Mikdash the Kodashav, and therefore that is why they're interchangeable. Oh my gosh, is this like a precursor to Seder Kachim that we're going to be learning for like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years? Lots of korbanos, lots of details. Anyways, okay, weiter. Valzodin Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashav. Now this is interesting. This is very interesting. If somebody intentionally went into the Beis HaMikdash or ate Kodshim in a state of Tumah, Soyer Anaisa Befnim v'Yom HaKippur Mechaprin. the goat that is offered in the Heichel, as well as Yom Kippur, are mechaper. Isn't that awesome? When there was a Beis HaMikdash, right, it's Yom Kippurim. Ki bayom hazeh yichaper aleichem v'tar esem mikol chatosechem v'nei Hashem titoru. After Yom Kippur, you are atoned. So even if you went into the Beis HaMikdash intentionally in a state of tumah, comes Yom Kippur, you are forgiven. The Sarah Nasa Bifnim and Yom Kippur itself are mechaper. Al Shar Averis, and any other Aver you might have done, Shabbat Torah, Akalos, Vachamuros, lighter weight, heavier weights, Vazdonos, Vashkogos, intentional, unintentional, Hoda, Velohoda, admitted, didn't admit, Esse, Veloisase, Kresus, Misus Bezdin, doesn't matter. Sarah Mishtaleach, mechaper. The goat that is chucked off the cliff will be mechaper for all other averos. Mamash, by the end of Yom Kippur, once all the korbanos have been offered, you are atoned. Echad Yisraelim, ve'echad Kehanim, ve'echad Kohen Mashuach. Whether we're talking about Yisraelim, whether we're talking about Kohanim, whether we're talking about the Kohen Gadol, it's all the same. Which is interesting because now we're about to give differences. I think the Gemara maybe is going to ask that, but I haven't gotten that far. Ma bein Yisraelim, the Kohanim, the Kohen Mashuach. What is the difference between Yisraelim and the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol? El shapar mechaper al akoyanim al tumas mikdash v'kodashav. That the cow, right? So meaning we had right. We have for tumas mikdash and v'kodashav, we have right the Sarah Nasa Bifnim. Right, for Yisraelim, we talked about Sarah Nasa Bifnim, Sarah Nasa Bachutz, but for the Kohanim, it is there is a Par Nasa Bifnim, that is what's Mechaper for the Kohanim, for Tumas Mikdash V'Kodashav. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Kishem Sha'adam Asar Nasa Bifnim, Mechaper al Yisrael, Kachdam Apar, Mechaper al Kohanim. Just like the blood of the Sarah Nasa Bifnim is Mechaper for the Yisraels, so the blood of the Par Nasa Bifnim is Mechaper for the Kohanim. That's for them. And just like the vidui that is done by the Sarah Mishtaleach is Mechaper for the Yisraels, and the vidui of that is done for the Paranas Bifnim is what's Mechaper for the priests. Friends, that was the base of Masechtas Shevuos. The whole daf was basically the Mishnayos of the first parak of Masechta Shevuos, and as we saw, we kind of went straight into some kodshim like sugyas, talking about korbanos, talking about Beis HaMikdash, Tumatar, things like that. But all right, but then we're gonna go weiter tomorrow on Masechta Shevuos. Peace out.